Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll be testing a very unusual sounding ESS Sabre based converter that is called SMSL D1SE or Special Edition. With this one, SMSL redesigned from the ground up everything, so started with an audio grade transformer with some best-in-class capacitors, with a hybrid IV and LPF stage, by using some discrete components and op-amps. It's really unlike anything that SMSL has done before. It's part of their VMV line or high-end line. It goes for $720 and it's time to check it out. SMSL put a much bigger accent on build quality and looks this time around, crafting a clean-looking device that carries smooth lines and rounded edges, all made out of premium materials. It uses a full metal roll cage that is wrapping it entirely, being carved from a single block of aluminum. There is just a single metal plate attached underneath it, making it the first unibody design of SMSL. Its LCD screen is protected by a layer of tempered glass. I find it big, easy to read, and it's bright enough to be used in the living room. You can place it directly on your table, or you can add 4 metal spikes by screwing them with your bare hands, which adds some high-end flair to it. As for controls, you'll find input and output selector buttons and a volume wheel that can work as a menu navigator. On its back, all the nicer digital inputs are present as USB, I2S, optical, coaxial, and there's a Bluetooth antenna socket. It offers a pair of RCA and XLR outputs that are volume controllable or fixed. As for tech inside it, first and foremost, high-end audio starts with an outstanding power supply design. There's an IEC filter that conditions the incoming AC voltage, a secondary filtering stage follows, and then an audio-grade transformer from Noratel. Not all transformers are made the same, but the one used inside D1SE is a very special one that is being used mostly in high-end electronics. There's a flagship ES9038 Pro DAC chip, an XMOS receiver, a combination of op-amps and discrete components at the IV and output stages. An MQA decoder is also on board and a Bluetooth 5.0 receiver as well. In the end, they used top-grade components, a very capable chipset, and I expect some great things coming out of it. Okay folks, I'm ready to hit some eardrums. Sound-wise, it's a very different DAC to any other ESS Sabre equipped converter that SMSL has ever done. So this time around is not about being super clean, super transparent, super detailed, because clearly it has all that in spades. It's not about being noiseless, super technical, not about covering the frequency response in full, because again, it does that pretty easily. This time around is about awakening emotions in your music. It's about making you move to the rhythm of the music, putting goosebumps all over your body. So it just added some organic matter, so it was more liquid sounding, more smoother sounding, more real. It added more weight, more air in between the notes. It's really a very different beast compared to usual ESS Sabre converters. So it was just considerably more organic. So unlike ESS Sabre converters, it was reminding me a lot more R2R ladder converters or maybe AKM based converters, but certainly not ESS Sabre converters. Now, HE1000SE by Hi-Fi Man became slowly my daily drivers because I find them quite easy to drive. They don't need a lot of power, and I find them quite resolving, so I can review easily DACs, amplifiers, and so on. The only problem that I have with HE1000 is that they can show a little bit of treble glare, a little bit of listening fatigue, so I cannot listen to them for hours daily, but I'm listening to music quite a lot, and that's why you need to use a warmer sounding source and amplifier. And when D1SE just arrived, I was with the HE1000 on my head, and I thought, hey, I should give it a try. And I was with the HPA4 by Benchmark on my table. That is really dead flat, so super linear amplifier. It's a colorless, achromatic sounding amplifier. And suddenly my music became just smooth, warm, very liquid, heavy weight, so there is more organic matter, so everything just was different sounding compared to any other ESS Sabre converter. And I knew that all that magic wasn't coming from the HPA4, that is really a dead flat amplifier. So all that was coming from the D1SE. Bottom line is that you should discard everything you know about ESS hybrid converters, because D1SE is not really following those rules anymore. There is simply more authority in the bass, more sweetness with vocals, some liquidity with instrumental music. There is slightly more air traveling around, and this makes it quite unique sounding. I then decided using it in my loudspeaker setup that you can see behind me. So while SMSL didn't add actual line amplifier circuits or maybe some analog relays for a perfect volume matching between both channels, they put a lower impedance on both its RCA and XLR output, so you can work directly with a power amplifier without the need of a preamplifier. So I'll just say it directly that it worked just great, driving directly to power amplifiers, AHB2 by benchmark, and driving those loudspeakers that you see behind me. I didn't spot any kind of noise, so it was absolutely noiseless, even at close to maximum volume. And mind you, I was sending almost 380 watts in those KEF reference 3 and Sound of Eden Crescendo Uno. Again, it's a smoother, warmer, more organic character, just moved over to the living room, so it was again more organic, slightly gentler sounding in a way, so it was rolling off a little bit the upper treble. It was sounding like I was listening to an Artwire ladder DAC, which is kind of unusual. Everything just felt a little bit weightier and airy in a way. So I was listening just to music, not just to mere sounds. It was a different experience. It was like I was looking at a big picture, so I was not just hearing sounds, micro details. I was hearing everything on a macro scale, so I was hearing music and not small portions of it. So it makes sense now why there is a VMV A1 amplifier that is being recommended for the D1SE, as it seems to work nicely with headphones and also with stereo setups alike. As for detail retrieval and transparency, telling you that D1SE is an extremely detailed and extremely transparent sounding DAC, it's like saying that a Ferrari is a super fast car. So obviously there is as much detail, there is as much transparency, tiny nuances and so on as you can possibly desire. And I believe that the only limiting factors would be your upstream equipment, so your loudspeakers, your headphones, your amplifiers, of course your musical files and your hearing apparatus. But most important than ever is not how many details would be appearing in the tracks, but how those details are being provided to you. So in my opinion, this is not very super sharp. It doesn't have sharp leading edges. It doesn't have strong leading edges. It has softer leading edges, so it's more gentle in here. So it pushes that information towards you in a very natural way. So they are just appearing out of thin air, out of a blackness, out of a void, and are being pushed gently towards you. So this is not an aggressive DAC. It never screams, hey man, look, there's a micro detail in there. Hey, please look, there's a micro detail. It will never do that. So you know that you can hear all those nuances, but you'll be the one to choose to hear them or not. It's more gentler in here. So again, it reminds me about the sound of Artwire ladder DACs, and I believe it's the third time when I'm saying this. So it adds a little bit more liquidity and a peace of mind, so to speak. And while there is indeed a delta sigma modulator inside, and of course this is an oversampling DAC, it doesn't sound like one. It just offers softer leading edges and puts a higher accent on the whole musical experience. Moving on to Soundstage, so sounding big, sounding wide, deep, tall, call it as you want, so just huge in terms of Soundstage, is not the sole job of your amplifier that is driving your loudspeakers or your headphones, because I believe it's also the job of the source that is driving that amplifier. So because everything starts here at the source. And Soundstage is one of those things that cannot be measured by the world's best audio analyzers out there, but our simple or sophisticated minds can do that pretty easily in less than a minute. And we can easily tell that's a huge soundstage, that's a small one, that's a claustrophobic one, and so on. And if people are asking me what should I recommend to them, in their living room while driving some bookshelf loudspeakers or maybe some closed back headphones, then I would probably recommend them some bigger sounding R2R ladder DACs, because those are never limiting the air travel. And of course, there are several exceptions from that rule. Several Delta Sigma DACs also sounded quite big, quite enveloping. As a small example, Guster X26 Pro and Matrix Audio Element X were quite bigger sounding to usual Delta Sigma converters. And while D1SE cannot outperform or sound on the same level with those converters, those are much more expensive, it sounded much bigger to any other SMSL converter that I've tried to this day. So be it SU9, SU8, M200, M500, D1SE was just bigger sounding, more enveloping, more impressive in here. So when I put it back in the living room while driving those two AHB2 power amplifiers, I was surprised by how much air was traveling around. So again, it pushed a lot of air around. I even needed to lower my volume a little bit because glasses were starting to dance somewhere around here. In my opinion, this is not a medium-sized soundstage that I'm describing most of the entry to mid-level converters. So this is not like that. Generally speaking, we're dealing here with a good transient response that could provide some speedy dynamics and a decent impact into my chest. However, it had some softer leading edges, so those weren't super powerful, super defined, super contoured, and that's why it didn't pound my body as hard as I'm used to with some other converters. So of course, thanks to those softer leading edges, I could listen to bright tilted headphones or loudspeakers all day long without any kind of listening fatigue. And going through a very huge music collection, it was very obvious to me that it didn't have a need for speed, so to speak. So it was never going super fast. It wasn't keeping up with the most demanding tracks, and it didn't pound my body with an incredible force. And I believe that most, but not all, R2R ladder DACs are following the same path. And weirdly enough, D1SE sounded pretty much the same. You should understand that I still headbanged with my rock and electronica tunes. I still felt all those energies pretty well, so I got some goosebumps. But it was never stealing my attention, just holding me still into my listening spot. It was still quite expansive sounding, it was still covering the frequency response in full. But it didn't want to fight with the meanest sounding, with the hardest slamming DACs out there, like X26 Pro, for example. And I believe that mostly or all SMSL DACs are going in the same direction, so I never find them super impactful sounding. I find them fast but not hard slamming. Not even SU9 that was fighting in the lightweight category, so delivering speedy jabs, but never painful uppercuts. When it comes to simple things as bass, from the entire SMSL army of DACs, I believe that D1SE was just the strongest candidate because it delivered more oomph, more warmth, more substance down low, so it was easily reaching those lowest octaves as 20 Hz, no problem. And be it sub-bass, be it mid-bass, it was always very effortless sounding, so it was layered sounding without raising high those distortion numbers. With all that said, it wasn't really keeping up with the most demanding electronica tracks, with double drums, for example, as well. And I wanted slightly more, a better slam in my chest for a better transient response experience. Midrange had a natural tone, and that is again something very unusual to say about ESS Sabre-based converters. So male and female voices just carried a little bit more emotions, more air, more weight. Their vocal cords vibrated a little longer. It was somewhat warmer and denser sounding in here, to a point of becoming soul-grubbing with some particular music. SMSL tuned it differently this time around, so tilting it towards fullness and naturalness. And its mid-range performance actually reminds me a little bit about the sound of my own Matrix Audio Element X, that is again discarding that thinness, brightness, and listening fatigue. And everything that is happening in this region just feels more organic, more energetic, like there is a higher dynamic range. I'm not so sure what makes it so different in the treble compared to some other SMSL converters, but clearly it was gentler and softer sounding in here compared to any other SMSL DAC. So I could listen even to rock, to metal tunes, not heavy on the treble, even with HE1000SE, and that wouldn't be a problem, wouldn't be a burden in long listening sessions. So there is no thinness, no brightness, no listening fatigue. It was never clinical sounding. Obviously, it rolled off a little bit the upper treble, but by making it a little bit more natural sounding in here. In all fairness, D1SE is one of the most relaxing sounding DACs in the treble. It's gentler sounding even compared to some IEM-based converters as a small point of comparison. So if you're engaging that reach or tube preset, then it becomes buttery smooth, blazing through brighter recordings by rolling off parts of the upper treble. In my view, the one and only competitor for the SMSL D1SE is the topping D90SE that I've reviewed not too long ago. And if you want to know how it compares with the best topping converter, then please check out my written review that I put below. It's on chapter 9 and it's one click away. As for my conclusions, I liked most SMSL DACs that I tried around here, but I was never moved by their neutral tonality. Sure enough, all those were clean sounding, transparent, detailed, super fast, super technical sounding, but they weren't making music the way I like it. I'm quite surprised and really quite shocked by a very different thinking behind this product right here. Clearly, SMSL put a lot of effort and a lot of soul in making it different sounding, and I believe that it delivered a great performance on all fronts. And considering its great build quality, its amazing feature set, and of course its lifelike performance, it's my pleasure awarding it my highest gold award. It was fully deserved. Okay guys, my full in-depth review can be found on my website. In case you want to support this channel, please subscribe to it. And as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!